Hey guys, how are you doing? My name is Rob of Ro2R Review, and welcome back to another Star Wars video. So with the first official trailer and look at the Han Solo movie finally out and finally behind us, I realized I wanted to revisit an old topic, a thought that I've had in my head surrounding the Star Wars universe and this new era post-George Lucas, with Kathleen Kennedy and Disney involved and their whole game plan for the Star Wars film universe, and kind of discuss how I think Han Solo fits into that, and really what we might be seeing from the Star Wars universe going forward, and if it's the right move. So the gist of what I'm talking about and getting at in this video is whether or not we will be seeing too many Star Wars movies. And I know that in a lot of ways that probably seems like an insane statement because, hey, Star Wars is awesome. In fact, it's the most awesome. It's the greatest thing in the world. It is definitely my favorite thing, a lot of you guys know. Even though my YouTube channel is focused mostly on gaming and Nintendo, the fact that I still like to talk about Star Wars on occasion, I like to really bring up the fact that it really is, of all the different nerdy things out there, my favorite thing. I am that kind of Star Wars fanboy. So we go to the idea of too many Star Wars movies, and does that make sense? And what are we seeing from Lucasfilm that shows us that may or may not be happening? So in this new era of Star Wars, since it returned to the big screen after a 10-year hiatus, we had Episode 7, The Force Awakens, of course we had Rogue One, of course we just had Episode 8, The Last Jedi, a very divisive movie, and I've shared my opinions on it a few times, and I will say that overall, I do ultimately still love what's happening with the Star Wars films. In this new era, again, post-George Lucas. There's a lot of things I miss and that I think were far, far better back in the old days, back when Lucas was running it. But hey, 7 and 8 are really great movies for what they're doing, considering they were made without the creator in this new era. Rogue One is a really fine and entertaining spin-off movie that I think is very good. I have flaws with all three of these new era movies. There are huge things about them that I don't like, but there are far more things about them that I do, so honestly, I still take away mostly all of the good from everything happening with Star Wars now. The other thing going on is, of course, like I already alluded to in the beginning of the video, Han Solo, the second spin-off and the first character-focused Star Wars movie will be coming out in just a couple of months. And next year, after a year-and-a-half break between Han Solo and this film, we will, of course, get Episode 9, which will wrap up the new trilogy, apparently wrap up the entire saga, which makes a lot of sense. And then we know of a couple of other projects that are still supposed to be coming to us. The big thing, of course, is Rian Johnson's trilogy, which we don't really know anything about, other than he is writing the three and directing at least the first. It's kind of his sort of project, and he is the overlord of it, which I am definitely very excited for. And then they recently announced the two Game of Thrones writers are going to also be working on a series of films. Some people at first speculated, oh, maybe they're just going to make another TV show for Disney's streaming service because they're obviously TV writers. But nope, that's not the case. They specifically want to make Star Wars films. They said they have a specific time frame within the universe and the timeline of Star Wars that they like and that they would like to write about. So they're probably, I mean, it certainly sounds to me like they're just going to be giving us another trilogy set in a different time, doing different things. And then, of course, we all but know that the Obi-Wan movie is going to be coming, very, very likely to be the 2020 Star Wars films, which means we have 3 more to go confirmed, with Han Solo this year, Episode 9 the following year, and then likely the Obi-Wan movie after that. And I mean, obviously we're all excited for that Obi-Wan movie. We all want it. We know it's going to happen. It's going to be spectacular. And that's pretty much it. There are rumors about the Boba Fett movie or the Bounty Hunter movie or like the Jabba the Hutt movie or whatever they wanted to do there. A young Leia. I mean, there's so many different ideas and rumors that have been out there. But as far as what we know and are confirmed, that's what's going on. And then there's another huge element to this, which is that Disney has kind of been quoted as saying a couple of years ago that they expect to release a Star Wars movie every year for the foreseeable future. So that's like the plan. They want to MCU this, comic book movie this, Star Wars universe, and just, you know, completely inundate the world with Star Wars films, which so far they've been doing. They've been living up to that because ever since they made their first new movie, Episode 7, we've had a movie every year and are still planned to have a movie every year going up to 2020. And so with all of those background details and the list of films behind me, now I want to actually share, do I think that we might be seeing too many Star Wars movies? And as the world's biggest Star Wars fan and a huge Star Wars optimist, yeah, I think we're seeing too many Star Wars movies. I don't like this plan. And to tell you the truth, when Disney or Lucasfilm, I can't remember who came out and said this, but it's an official quote and an official game plan as far as we know. When they said a couple of years ago, we are proud to say we're going to bring us at least one Star Wars movie every year for the foreseeable future. I definitely facepalmed, and I was like, I love Star Wars, but I don't really like that. Now, to understand why I feel that way, you kind of have to understand me and my Star Wars fanship a little bit better, and I've made a couple of videos talking about that at length, but obviously not everyone has seen those videos, and for all I know, this is your first Star Wars video you found, so you have no idea who I am or how I feel about this stuff. For me, when I go back to 2012, when the announcement was made that George Lucas was retiring, the company was being sold to Disney, and that then they were starting their work and early prep on a new trilogy, episodes 7, 8, and 9. That rocked my world to the core. And I was very sad about it, and I didn't like it. I mean, I knew at some point George Lucas would have to retire, and I am the biggest George Lucas fanboy. The man is far from perfect. His directing and his movies are all far from perfect, but at the end of the day, I love him. I think he is a genius, and I love all 6 of his Star Wars films. I think he tells a Star Wars story the way that makes the most sense to me. So I was always hoping if there was ever going to be more Star Wars movies that it would come from him. But of course, you know, he's an older guy. He's getting up there, man. So he wasn't going to be able to do this forever. And at some point, we knew he would retire. And he'd have to, who knows, who would have known what the fate of Lucasfilm would have been at that time. And so then we learned. He retired and he decided to sell the company to a larger company. And give the company over to his very, very good friend and longtime partner, Kathleen Kennedy. And so that whole thing was interesting to me because I was devastated Lucas was retiring, and I hated that Lucasfilm was getting sold to Disney. I am not a hater of Disney by any stretch, guys, but I just didn't want those two worlds mixed. And so I hated that they were being sold to Disney, but I loved Kathleen Kennedy, thought she was a smart person to take over and a good friend of George Lucas. And we also got the announcement of episode 7, and I was like, oh my god, that's the biggest news here, probably. You guys, a new Star Wars movie, a new episode, a new trilogy. This is the dream come true. Let Star Wars fans rejoice. But it was a weird day because that was like very disappointingly the buried news. The bigger news was Lucas retires, Disney buys Lucasfilm. And oh, by the way, a tiny little blurb about episode 7. I was like, oh my god, you guys, this should have been the headline for the next year. This was the biggest news to me. Episode 7 is coming. And so anyway, the whole point of that story is that I ultimately didn't love the fact that while George Lucas retired, which he absolutely deserved to do so, I didn't like the fact that he decided to take his company and instead of just give his company to his friend Kathleen Kennedy and let Lucasfilm continue on as its own independent entity, which I still think it should have done, he instead decided to sell it to a larger company, and for that company to be Disney, who I think is fantastic, but also very money hungry, and in sometimes ways that I don't like. And so that was kind of the problem, and it feeds into the idea of, well, now that we have a Lucasfilm entity that isn't operating on its own and is owned by a larger company, we maybe see different business decisions, different distribution ideas, and different business models doled out around the Star Wars universe, and that's what we've seen, which is the spin-off films, which are fine, and then also a Star Wars movie every year forever. Oh my god, we're going to shove Star Wars so in your face you're going to hate it and want to vomit after 5 years. That's the kind of thing that a Disney-owned Lucasfilm does. A George Lucas-owned Lucasfilm absolutely does not do that or think that way, as evidenced by its entire history of existence as owned by George Lucas for that 40 years until he decided to retire. That is your evidence right there. He handled it with a different level of care and respect because it was his baby. He owned it. He loved it. He created it and birthed it and raised the whole thing and the movie industry around him throughout that 40 years. That's the thing that made it very special. You could tell there was an intimate relationship between the creator and owner of the entity of Star Wars and with Star Wars itself. Now it's a little bit different. Now it's owned by a company that sees it as just a money printing machine. And let's make no bones about it. Obviously, Lucas himself saw that as well. He knew he had a money printing machine in Star Wars and Lucasfilm. But again, he still took care of it like an auteur. He didn't take care of it like a money-hungry business entity. And so, anyway, that brings us to Disney and the Star Wars movies every year. And I think that the problem I have with the idea of a Star Wars movie every year and what we're seeing right now is it definitely ruins the magic and the mystique and the specialness of Star Wars. This is not a new argument. I've been feeling this forever, but, since even before I had a YouTube channel. But in recent years, as people started to realize that we've had too much Star Wars, other people have said this exact same thing, and I agree with it 100%. I think that there's something to be said for Star Wars feeling special every time a new movie comes out, and that a break between films is very important because those breaks that we've had in the past between Star Wars films are painful and excruciating, and we hate it, and the silence sucks, and we want to know the new details about the new Star Wars movie. Phantom Menace comes out. Oh my god, that was insane. What's going to happen next? 3 years of guessing and wondering and waiting and theorizing until finally rumors and rumblings and screenshots start to come out about the next film, which would become Attack of the Clones, and so on and so forth. And that stuff is great, and it's more exciting when it disappears for a while and you have a chance to miss it, and then it comes back and blows you away, and that's just the best. Honestly, you can equate it to something like maybe a long-distance relationship, and I've had a long-distance relationship actually 2 times in the past myself, and I feel like there's something really cool about the fact that you like this person and want to spend your time with this person, and they want to spend their time with you, but hey, you only get to see each other on occasion, however that might work out for you in that situation, and so you might go days, weeks, or months apart. Who knows how long your distance is between each other, but by the time you finally have a reason to get back together and spend some time together, man, it is the sweetest time. That feeling is so fantastic. And in a silly way, that's very similar to the whole Star Wars thing of like, let it come and go. The ebbs and flows of Star Wars hype and Star Wars movie releases absolutely, I think, is a part of the original Star Wars DNA and what made it so special and impactful throughout all of its previous films and throughout the last several decades. Right now, releasing so many Star Wars films and not giving people a break and trying to make it like the MCU, like I already said, kind of dilutes the franchise, and it dilutes the special feeling of what makes Star Wars great and unique. And it's not supposed to be this thing that's just churned out like on a regular rotation from a manufacturing plant. That's not Star Wars. It's carefully crafted by someone or some people who care about it and believe in it and are artistically associated with it and want to organically make something incredible when the time is right, not because it has to fit a schedule. And to me, that's the big problem I see with what's happening right now with this idea coming from Lucasfilm and from Disney. Again, I put this more on the Disney camp of a decision than the Lucasfilm camp of a decision, but regardless, it's a problem across the board. And, you know, I struggle with this in a way internally because, again, I've liked the 3 movies we've been given so far. I was very surprised by the Han Solo trailer. I made a review video of the trailer, and I'm like, hey, you know, I mean, I've still got some concerns, but you know what? It looks really good, and I'm just going to hopefully go in and take out the best and not pay attention to the worst. So I think it's going to be fine. I'm really excited to see what happens with Episode 9 and obviously Obi-Wan. So, like, I'm excited for what's going to come because I still love Star Wars, and it hasn't totally been ruined for me yet. But I do worry if we get to 2025, 26, what happens in another 5, 8, 10 years if we truly have had so many Star Wars movies between now and then? Is it going to feel the same? Is it going to be doing what it's supposed to do? Is it going to be enriching the universe and the fanship and bringing us all together? I mean, right now everyone is divided just because the last movie is something a lot of people didn't like. And that's what it is. I don't even want to go into that. But the point is, I think that we can still move past that if we get better films, but also breaks between the films. And so, in wrapping this up, that's how I feel. I like what we've had. I believe in the couple of movies we still know we're going to get, but I really hope that they find a way to take a break. I would like it if after Episode 9 or the Obi-Wan movie in 2020, that before the Johnson trilogy and the Game of Thrones writers trilogy finally starts to get off the ground, that they give us like 3 or 5 years between Obi-Wan in 2020 and those movies. So I, of course, want to hear what you guys have to say. What do you think about the idea of Star Wars movies? Are there too many? Are there going to be too many? Do you think that there is no such thing as too many Star Wars movies and you love what's been happening and what's probably going to continue to happen based on quotes from Lucasfilm and Disney and all that stuff? You've heard my feelings. I'm not a big fan of it, but I'm still willing to give all the individual movies a fair shot when they do release. So, talk about this stuff below, guys. I love having the Star Wars conversation with you so much. I love it when you guys get interested and invested in it as well. And I think that's going to be it. So, thank you so much as always for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I will catch you next time on another video.